Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 650. Available now on digital is Love of an Icon, The Legend of Crocodile Dundee, a documentary that delves into the making of Crocodile Dundee and the creative partnership between producer John Cornell and star Paul Hogan that not only made TV and film history, but placed Australia on the map as a new face in the entertainment landscape. Featuring never-before-seen archive footage and candid interviews with Crocodile Dundee stars Paul Hogan, Linda Kozlowski, and also the late David Galpillo. Love of an Icon reminds that behind every film is a community of creative souls working in unison to deliver the best work that they can. And joining me now on the podcast are the directors Delvene Delaney and Victoria Baldock. Delvene and Victoria, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
I'm feeling really good because this is a really great sense of nostalgia for me when I talk about Crocodile Dundee, because the first movie that I saw in cinemas as a 7-year-old was Crocodile Dundee Part 2. First cinema movie. I remember it used to be a cinemas not far from where I live here at Southgate in Sylvania. Not there anymore, not for a long time. My brother took me down there, rode on the handlebars on his bike, took me down there. First movie that I saw was seeing Paul Hogan as Mick Dundee, first cinema experience. And now I've been doing this as like writing about movies like 20 years now, and it goes all the way back to that experience right there. So this is very much a special kind of thing for me. Delvene, I want to ask you first. The process of discovery with this documentary is quite remarkable. From what I'm saying, yourself and Victoria, you're working on a 4K restoration. You're going through all these tubs that your late husband, John, had in archive. You come across all these things, documents, materials, film. And then not only is this something that you are discovering for the first time yourself, but the idea comes up, a documentary, which I'm surprised has never been done before. I mean, this is one of the biggest film in Australian history, and no one's really delved into it in this way. Number one, what was that sense of discovery like for you? And number two, when the documentary aspect idea kind of came up, were you kind of also surprised that no one really kind of tapped into this before? Because it's quite remarkable considering $300 million at the box office, highest grossing Australian film of all time, and no one's really kind of gone into the making of this movie before.
We didn't have time. This kind of took off. I didn't know for a start that any documentary film footage had been shot for Crocodile Dundee 1 until we discovered the US, the New York shoot. And then subsequent to that, whilst we were already filming Love of an Icon, we had the opportunity, a most remarkable discovery of finding the Kakadu footage, which was labelled incorrectly. And it wasn't until we were able to ask Peter Feynman, who directed Croc 1, why his name was on these two big film reels that we accidentally found, that he was able to explain that he had actually engaged John Bowring, who was a film cinematographer that we used on exterior sketches for the Paul Hogan show, to come up to Kakadu and shoot footage for the making of Crocodile Dundee. But they were labelled directly to Peter Feynman Productions and identified as the making of Hogs. So we didn't include them in our archival materials. And
what we'd found first was about 22 film reels that were in the original canisters, some of them vinegar syndrome, but some of them were okay, of the making of Crocodile Dundee 2, which had been Delvene's job on Crocodile Dundee 2 to do that project. And we even found Delvene's old notes, which, was sort of the aim of that documentary at the time, but not Croc 1, but Croc 2. So we didn't actually have any behind the scenes footage of Croc 1 until, like Delvene said, we discovered that in the shoot of the contemporary interviews for Love of an Icon. So it was just this complete blessing, really, because
we didn't even know if that material that we found accidentally was going to be able to be used, because there was only one place in Australia who could restore that. And Peter Feynman, who was here at the time, and I was able to say to him, what is this? And does Rimfire Films own it? And he said, oh, you probably won't even get sound. It may not even have picture. And it came back pristine. And the core of Love of an Icon's content because everything that we found in that Kakadu footage was what we would have loved to have included. And then, you know, Crocodile Dundee just went ballistic as soon as it was released. So we didn't get the opportunity to make a documentary about the making of. So John, in his wisdom, tasked me to do that when I came on board as crew for Crocodile Dundee 2. I had 3 jobs, and one of those jobs was to direct and produce a documentary on the making of. But once again, even Croc 2 took off. So we never sort of got around to making that documentary. And it is the turning of a full circle to come back and find all the old handwritten notes and footage and from what I had worked on 40 years ago, or nearly 40 years ago. So it was a fantastically heart-filling, wonderful find to come across the materials that we did, and then to be able to do something with them, because in finding them, there was like, well, we have a compulsion to share it with everybody, because I feel that Crocodile Dundee is part of many Australians' story and definitely a part of our cultural history. And so it became compelling in a way for us to not only share the footage, but also to reveal the other people who added their spark. And that was the thrust of Love of an Icon.
I think it's a really beautiful question that you've asked, you know, like, why hasn't anyone done it before? It's given the film it is. But I guess also there's been so much told about Paul Hogan's story in the press and the same stories for so many years. And that's what's really beautiful is Delvene's generosity, really, to open her heart and share her love story with her husband, with John. You know, it's a love story on so many levels. It's Delly and John, it's Paul and Linda, it's John and Paul, it's Paul with his audiences. You know, it's been really amazing, but there's not really the chance. We hope really that the way Love of an Icon is received and enjoyed, there's not really anyone else in the world that could tell that story but Delvene, as part of that triangle of the chemistry and the love, and with the experience, with the history too of her own history with the Paul Hogan show. So it's a really unique perspective and very generous with such a personal, intimate journey, really.
It really is. And just to add to that, Victoria, Victoria, when I watch Love of an Icon, not only do I pick up on the same themes that you picked up on, to me, Crocodile Dundee, the whole process of it is a story of innovation as well. And everyone knows that even these days, it is hard to make a film in the Australian film industry, let alone get it overseas and have the impact that it had. And I think a lot of that came from the innovation that John had as a producer and as a creative mind, not only through getting mom and pop investors to get this kind of $8 million budget, which I think some people do that now to some studios in America, and it's just started doing it now, which is a really effective way to get things done, I think. But also when it comes down to finding the creative tornado, the creative talent that is Paul Hogan, and understanding that this guy has it. Because, you know, you two both have been in the industry for a long time, let alone have someone come from nowhere, be a TV star, then transition to film and become a film star. It's maybe easier to do today, considering that the technology, everyone's watching a lot of stuff on streaming, so it's different. But back in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, the transition from TV to film, let alone as an independent film, which Crocodile Dundee was, and is an independent film before it became this mega franchise, is something really to just really look back on and just think, wow, this is just such an innovative way to get a movie done. And I think that's something that's remarkable about it as well, because it could have collapsed any time at all, but John stuck to his guns and Paul stuck to his guns, and they got it made. So I think, Victoria, you've been in the industry for such a long time, looking at it, how it got made, it must be just not only kind of remarkable, but still kind of inspirational sort of way. I think people can still look at that and say, if they can do it back then, we can do it now as well.
Completely. And that's the message that we were really hoping to share with audiences today, and the sort of commercial hook, I guess, if you like, because, you know, behind the scenes is always interesting and making of is always fantastic, but it's that beautiful genre of, you know, having some VIP keys shared with you. It's the audience who's invited in to share. It's, you know, it's not always glamorous behind the scenes of a film, but there's so much to share of it. And there was a lot of things that we could have discussed really. And the brilliant Ray Brown, who was the key grip on the film, an absolute master of the industry. You know, many people that are in the business that have worked with Ray, when they've seen Love of an Icon, are just like, ah. But, you know, he talked a lot, didn't he, about how at the time, you know, that the crew, Russell Boyd's crew, they were the bee's knees. They were the crew in Australia, and they were, of course, doing really, really high-end commercials at the time, because that's how they would sort of. But, you know, that was high-end commercials and film were one thing, but then to switch over to, you know, and there was this real cultural distinction back then between the two, which, like you say,
Absolutely.
is now.
Mm.
But, you know, and there was a lot in that, actually. It was really, really fascinating. So we've got a lot of extra content that we can continue to sort of share from an industry point of view as well. I mean, you know, you can see the footage of the old Panavision cameras with their plastic covers on when they're filming in the outback, and it's extraordinary.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. And I think, Delvene, something that really comes to mind when watching this movie, and I have spoken to so many independent film makers, especially over the last several years, is how much of a team effort this is to put a movie together. It not only starts from, it's not really a top to the bottom kind of process, it's bottom up. It really starts with the foundations of, the crew and everyone else and the people you put in place. And then if they're going, and if, the producers behind them and they believe in sort of like John was, and you have Paul at the front kind of leading the charge as well, when everyone works together is in synchronicity like they are in this movie. And by all accounts, from watching the documentary, it was a great shoot, a fun shoot, and a shoot where, Paul pretty much came out and said, look, we haven't done this before, but we're going to give it a shot, and we think we can make a great movie. I think that's just a really great way to really kind of get the troops going and get that camaraderie going and make a great film. And I think it's something that people tend to forget about. There's a reason why for 3 minutes at the end of a movie, you have the end credits and you have all those list of names there. That's a community, that's a team, that's kind of like almost like a family that makes a film there. And it's really important that this movie kind of delved into that and touched on that and presented that the way that it did.
For sure. I think a film crew is often referred to as a family. And within a family, you need to have a level playing field. And John was all about egalitarianism. There was nothing elitist about my husband. And so he understood the value that all contributors bring from everybody. And that permeated through all of the businesses that we had together, whether it was hotels or hospitality or filmmaking or television. There was no hierarchy. You certainly weren't allowed to have an ego. And he completely understood the value of teamwork and championed that and treated that crew as, Ray Brown, key grip. I don't know that it made it into the doco. I don't think it did. But he mentioned how incredibly well John treated them and flying them first class, for some of them the very first time in their lives that they had ever flown at the pointy end of the plane. At the end of the shoot, John bought everybody, including the American crew, dry-as-a-bone coats because it was getting cold and people, and he always had this immense sense of generosity and compassion as a character. And so I think he just took that with him wherever he went, which was why John was so loved and revered by everybody throughout my entire life. Actually, I don't know anyone who's got an unpleasant word to say about John. And he was genuine with that. And then Paul Hogan also shares those values. So here are these two great Aussie blokes who brought that attitude to everything they did and made it all inclusive, which I think is probably why I felt like making Love of an Icon and sharing it was once again being able to be inclusive to an audience and to the people who'd worked on the film.
And Victoria, something that I've come to realize watching Crocodile Dundee over the years is that when that film's released, 86, the landscape of film, especially in America, where the film did incredibly well, kind of like that action hero kind of period, just Stallone, just Schwarzenegger's kind of macho bravado kind of stuff. And I think that something that really gravitated people towards the character of Mick Dundee in the character of Crocodile in the movie Crocodile Dundee was a sense of humility to the character. He was, in certain ways, he had a certain mythological kind of supernatural aspect to him, the way that he can relate to animals. And, he's the type of bloke that if he sees a monkey, he can throw a can of whatever it is and like, yeah, get the guy from around the block. It's almost like that kind of aspect to him, but he doesn't exploit it in any way, where maybe other filmmakers might have him done so. And I think that kind of aspect to the character of Mick Dundee is really a reflection of both John and Paul, right? I mean, from what I've seen from the documentary and what you just talked about now, Delvene, is that there was no humility to these men, even though they were from a point of stardom in their own country. They were really humble. They really wanted to show people that they were just down to earth like they are, and they're in this process and just making it together. And I think that's something that people really liked about them, and it shows in Mick as a character as well.
And I think Linda sums it up beautifully in her interview too, like she's like, he was a superhero. He didn't have weird, I mean, she's so charming in her interview, the way she says it too, but it's like, he wasn't like some half bug, some weird sort of character. He was just a guy. He was an ordinary guy, but he was loved by men and women, and he was all the things that he is. And that still resonates. Like there's a simplicity in it, but there's also the values that underpin all of it. And you can see it in the film. We were at the Gold Coast Film Festival last night with a Q&A screening, and the audience, we just had the most wonderful Q&A. It was so lovely. And, and there was all age groups in the audience, and we actually flipped the Q&A on its head and asked the audience some questions at the beginning. But we're really curious to see too, because it resonates internationally. It resonates. It's still licensed and broadcast all around the world, has been for many years. The continuing business is enormous. So we know that culturally it resonates, but generationally it resonates too. And it's fantastic to see, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, they're all, and they get it. They're now sort of like, oh, I get it. And seeing it on the big screen is really different than seeing it on television. Particularly with the restoration, you're seeing it, you're in it. The cinematic beauty of Russell Boyd's work and the restoration, just you're in it, so immersed. And it's yet a lovely young person, I think she was 21, said there's actually pauses in it. It's not this sort of overwhelming rush of stuff that we see so much now. There's this, you're in it, but you have time to be in it. And the pace it was really refreshing. That's what the overall feeling was, how refreshing it is. And you get time to laugh. It mixes simplicity, but not simplicity, just authentic, genuine humor.
I think that's
charm.
Yeah, that's the Crocodile Dundee is a simple film. It doesn't demand much of you. It's a quiet little, it's not quiet. It's a simple little love story, fish out of water. It's not a new genre. It's not asking you to get overly emotionally involved. It's just offering you a simple love story that resonates today because it's authentic and it's not up itself. And there's, the hero makes mistakes. He's grungy. He's not grungy. He's got hair on his chest and dirt on his hat and under his fingernails. He's a real man. And so I think that we can all relate better to that than somebody who flies through the sky in a dazzling cape and isn't real.
One man actually said it was relaxing to watch it, which was a really lovely way to describe it. And, there is no question with that ending that you still leave the cinema with goosebumps and your cup full. Like you're happy. You've seen something really enjoyable and really happy, but it's just so uplifting. And when we first sort of screened it,
a while ago,
a long time ago, together, we were doing all this work licensing it all around the world, and we hadn't actually watched it ever together. And it was such an honor for me to watch it with Delvene, because everything she kept saying, oh, that's John's cooey, that's this, that's that. Oh, then they did that. It was like, I was just like mind blown, just going, oof, this is like crazy. And that was sort of the beginning of feeling of like, this is too important to not capture that. Delvene's recollections, and then have the chance to have Paul's and Linda's and everybody involved.
Peter Feynman's too. He had
Yeah,
brought a perspective.
he did.
So yeah, it's been something that's quite challenging for me in some ways, particularly looking at old footage of my life, but primarily of John in his prime and power, and missing him and having to deal with grief. But you know, I would not hesitate to do it again.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Well, I think you should look at it also as a sense of pride as well, because just to see him in his element and doing what he did then and what he was able to accomplish, I think is remarkable. It really is. And just to piggyback on something you just said before, Victoria, you talked before about a generational impact of this. I think some people falsely kind of accuse the film of saying it's only a relic of its time, which I don't believe to be true whatsoever. And I know this because I love watching reaction channels on YouTube, especially when I watch movies. And whenever they watch any of these channels watch Crocodile Dundee. So we're talking like people from America or Canada, UK, what have you, 20 to 30, maybe late teens. And they watch the movie, they absolutely fall in love with the movie and they fall in love with Mick. And I think a lot of that has to do with going back to the certain simplicity of the story as well. Goes back to the humility of the character, but it's a charm to the character as well, and a charm to the film overall. And I think the pauses you were talking before, especially those scenes like in the Kakadu and all, in those scenes, I think that they've worked really well, because sometimes some films these days are over edited and they snap a little too much. There's no room to breathe. And that room to breathe and kind of like take a breath and soak in kind of like everything. You're almost kind of like in Linda, or it's almost like a POV of Linda's perspective, her character in the film, because you're kind of like looking at it almost because a lot of people from say CBD probably haven't been up to Northern Territory either, and that might be alien to them as well. So they're kind of like going through the process too. So I absolutely love that about the film, is that it still works so well as a piece of art, because if a story works and performances work, just like films from the golden age work, like now, that movie itself, the golden age of Australian cinema, like in the 80s, works so well. And I can't wait to see what people do react to it when they watch this new cut, because like you said before, Russell Boyd's photography, he worked Peter Weir's Oscar winner. To watch those scenes cleaned up in the 4K transfer, I think it's going to be quite remarkable on a big screen, because like you said, you have to watch it on a big screen. It's something to behold, right? You would have seen all these different cuts by now. I mean, I'm sure watching those Kakadu scenes in particular, maybe some of the scenes in New York City where he's like up there helping the jumper get off the roof as well. I reckon that the skyline and everything would have been simply remarkable to see on the big screen.
I mean, there's the outback, the set. I mean, it's stunning. It's stunning, and and it's really difficult. It's really challenging with the theatrical industry being so tough. We get it. It's hard. We all change. It's hard to get people to go out of their homes and go to the cinema now, especially when it's all there on streaming. So it's quite a different experience, but it's a really different experience. It's that beautiful thing about sitting in a cinema with other people and someone goes, "Whoa," when he says something goofy, and and it's like this sort of, I don't know, it's just a community to it, and it's lovely, and it's hard. It's hard industry, but if any film can remind people how uplifting it can be to go and sit in a cinema and smile, this one hopefully might be it.
Yeah. I think too, it's appealing because it's a bit reflective of the natural pace of life. Like the natural pace of life is to have pauses, and somebody does think before they speak, or they might hesitate before they move. And I think we've kind of lost that a little bit in modern, certainly social media, where everything has to be instantaneous and chopped up and in your face and quick. And it's like, oh, that's a bit overwhelming because that's not real life. And I think that pace of that film adds to the credibility of the character and the authenticity of the story, is that, no, this is like it's happening in real time. And so I think any time that you can add credibility to a piece of art, if you want to call it that, it resonates with people. They feel more accepting of it. And I think that might be part of the success of the film. I've never really sat down. I've tried to with Hogs when we were doing the doc. I said, why do you reckon it's so successful? Oh, there's many, many factors. And he'll offer some that are very different to what Peter Feynman might, or somebody like you, who's more of a latecomer to that whole experience. And you, Matt, as an observer, would offer. But that's part of the success, is that it's many-layered, multi-layered, and something for everybody. So I really hope that everybody can find there's something when they come to watch the film again, because there's a lot there on offer.
Well, for me, when I watch a film, there's a couple of requirements that I have. Number one, what are the stakes in the film? And there are stakes in this movie. There are especially the emotional stakes in the love story between with the two main characters. But it also is, do you want to hang out with this person for like 90 minutes? And Mick is one of those guys I think you would just love to hang out with, because wherever you go with him, I think he would just have a sense. No, I don't think seeking adventure, but he's the type of guy where he's just so curious and want to know everything about everything around him that he can't help himself but find himself go into different kind of situations, and just the way he might like navigate those situations would just be great to tag along with. And yeah, and I know that's why I loved when I still remember to this day going to the cinema, Crocodile Dundee 2. Watching it at the cinemas, and it's had an impact on my life. These Crocodile Dundee, these films, the movies that your husband John Cornell brought to us, and I just want to thank you, just to say that, and also I just want to thank you both for this wonderful documentary. For everyone listening, Love of an Icon, The Legend of Crocodile Dundee. It's streaming right now, so you can go to different places like Amazon Prime. What different place I'm going to have in the show notes or the links so you can check it out. And then next week, Encore cut, 4K restoration. A lot of work's been put into this, and thank you both for that as well. And I really recommend people check this out, because I know lately in cinemas, re-releases of older movies are actually doing really well. My hope is that Encore cut is going to do really well, and I actually have a big hope as well. And I just want to put it out there that somehow, some way, we could get some type of legacy sequel, because legacy sequels are big now. We've seen it with the Rocky movies, with Top Gun, with other things as well. I think it's, Mad Max has had a legacy sequel, Fury. I think it's high time, because when that Tourism Australia campaign came out with Danny McBride, Chris Hemsworth, a lot of people had interest in that. And I myself said, I hope this is a movie. And I think there's still potential to this to go forward, where we can have some type of legacy sequel. And I know Paul doesn't really, I don't know if he wants to put the levers back on for that much, but I think there's potential to do something with the story still, because a lot of people love the character and love the world. But before any of that happens, Love of an Icon, The Legend of Crocodile Dundee, streaming. Watch it now, and then watch the Encore cut next week, and be reminded that this is one of the great Aussie films and the biggest, highest grossing Australian film for a reason, because everyone loves it. And I just want to say thank you both for your time today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you both, and best of luck with both releases. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll mention to Hogs about doing Grandad Dundee.
Please do. Please do. I think there's a possibility there. There is. I can see it.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.